am the owner of Advanced Home Inspections. I started this business 11 years ago. A little bit about me: I have a license in New Hampshire and Vermont. I also work in Maine. I am a HUD 203K consultant. I'll explain that a little more in a minute. What we're doing, I will be able to fill in beautifully where Brian put his package together. It's like we did it together, and I never met the man. I talked to the gentleman who, his name's Josh, and he called me on the phone a month ago and said, would you mind doing a presentation? So this is the first presentation I've done in 2.5 years due to COVID, and I have a 3-hour class. I teach realtors about this loan that we're talking about. So I only say 45 minutes is set on the list, so I pulled some slides. We'll try to keep it down to around 8:30. I'm a national trainer for American Home Inspector Training Institute. I travel all over the country and I train home inspectors in many states. There's a technical requirement, classrooms requirement for people getting licenses to become home inspectors, and I'm in training for that. I am ASHI certified, which is not important to you folks right now. I was a builder for 35 years. I was a remodeling contractor and a home builder. I've had 360 plus homes. I've been responsible for either building them or part of the project to build them. I became large at one time, then I became small another time. So I have a little bit of experience with home. On the private side, I'm a licensed helicopter pilot, and I'm also a captain, and I love sailing. And those are my grandchildren, and the best title I have in that list here is being called Papa. I love them to death. My daughter's upset at me ever since she's had them because I give them what I couldn't give her. I don't have to work as much. Yeah, well, my granddaughter now, this picture is old. I thought he got pulled when he put the slides together for this. I don't do 30-minute presentations generally. I asked my office to pull the slide, and she didn't. So the oldest one standing behind me, she's 17 years old. She was going to come with me tonight. I said, this is an investor group. She's really sharp, and she loves this stuff, and she likes working with Papa. She knows how to run a chop saw. And investing is something I probably will do with her on summertime vacations. We'll do a flip or something, because I've done every form of investment you can think of in real estate. Okay, we're going to talk about in what we call the minimum property requirements. Brian mentioned he had a list come back. You folks who are realtors, how many realtors are in the room tonight? Okay, do you know what these are?
A lot of them.
What's that?
Some of them, yeah, a lot of them.
So, do you know what these come up when you get the appraisal back on an FHA loan, and there's a list of things to be done? That is a term, minimum property standards and requirement. All FHA loans, a house has to meet a certain standard. The book is this thick, this big, and it varies. It's a gray area for realtors. One guy says you need to do this, one appraiser says you need to do that, and you say, well, we didn't have to do that over here, but why am I having to do it over here? It's subjective like any other inspector. It goes with experience and knowledge. So there are different types of FHA loans. Tonight we're going to be talking about the 203B and the 203K. The 203B loan is a standard FHA loan. That has to meet those certain requirements. That's when you get that list back. The 203K is if the seller says, I can't put any money into this house. Somebody, it's up to you. You cannot get an FHA loan unless that house meets that standard. You can borrow the money to do that. That was the list that came back to Brian when I needed a roof and I wanted to do flooring. Now you got to do this, this, and this. That's a minimum requirement that house has to meet. And here's the definition of what it is. The definition is to verify that the property comprises of a single, readily marketable real estate entity eligible for FHA mortgage insurance. Think about what that says. You buy a house, you're a first-time home buyer, you're going to use this, you're going to do an FHA loan. What they're saying here is that we want the house to be in a certain condition so that they can readily market it should you default on your loan. They want to be able to sell this thing without having to go in and do repairs. That's the point behind this. And when I first saw this, I got involved with HUD 11 years ago. I was a builder, 2008 hurt me bad. It took me years to sell properties at crazy low money. So I said, I'm gonna do something different. I'm gonna get into the home inspection business, and I did, and my first client was HUD. I got a phone call, and they asked me if I would do foreclosure inspections for HUD. And I ended up doing them throughout New England. I did 10,000 plus foreclosure inspections for 3 years for HUD. So I got very involved with HUD, understanding minimum property requirements, and I traveled all over New England to do it. When we talk about, what we're gonna talk about tonight, some of the minimum property requirements, I took these slides out so we didn't have to go through the list of what they are. I'm gonna touch on a few of them in a couple more slides, just so you have an understanding once you see the types of 203K loans there are. But you can do a 203K, 203B, or a regular HUD for mixed use, non-residential, and the rest is not pertinent to you right now. Lead paint has to be addressed if it's a house that is a HUD insured house, and you folks are listing that and you sell it to a HUD purchaser, you will get a lead report for that house, and that house has to be abated, and it's done prior to the purchase price of it, to the purchase of it. On FHA loan does allow a commercial and residential mixed use property, and the conditions behind it are it can only be 49% of the square footage can be commercial, 51% has to be residential. That's whether you do a rehab or not. You cannot do you can do a rehab on this loan, but you cannot use the rehab money to do anything in the commercial. But you can convert the commercial back to residential with the rehab loan, but you cannot use it to fix the commercial space back to commercial space.
Are those terms like commercial, like 25 years, like a 5-arm, or is it 30-year? Fixed like an FHA?
FHA loan is a fixed loan, 3.5% down, whatever the current market rates are. You will get a mortgage for that. Same with the rehab portion of it, that will be escrowed, and we're gonna talk a little bit more about that as we get into it. And then you have, that's it, you're done. You have your mortgage payment, this is where we're gonna be. This loan, when I first was introduced to this thing's been around since the 60s. I think it was 1965. I came up with this rehab project to help people get into homes. They used to let people be the contractor as well. They no longer, it's not that HUD doesn't allow it, they still allow the purchaser to do the work. There is no investor, which is the lenders, there's no lender in this country that will allow participation by the home buyer or a relative of the home buyer. So if your dad's a builder, he cannot do the work, okay? Think about why. What is it we all do? We can do that, we have the knowledge. Oh yes, we have the time, and I'm gonna fight with my father if he's gonna be the builder. It was a disaster. So in 1995, they formed my position. They said, who's looking out after our interest? We want somebody that's going to look out after our interest to make sure the construction component of this loan is done according to what needs to be done. That at the end of the construction of this loan, the house meets at minimum property requirements. Okay? It was a fiasco prior to that. I was a builder when this came out, and the word on the street was never go and do a house with these folks, because it was a disaster. People think they can do more than they can, and they don't realize the amount of time involved with it. Excuse me. So it's a wonderful loan today, and what it is for investors or for a first-time home buyer, you are basically buying a house and having it appraised on a paper appraisal after the construction is done. That's a commercial loan. When I went to the bank to build a house, I said, I got a piece of land, I paid $200,000 for the land, I need $1.5 million to build a house on it. will you give me the money and here's the piece of paper, this is what the print looks like? They gave me the money. Here they're doing the same thing. I wanna buy this house and I wanna make it look like this. And, you know, we're gonna do this work and you get it at 3.5%. My commercial loan was not 3.5%, folks, and it wasn't 30 years long, or 3.5% down, and it wasn't 30 years long. I had 12 months to get out of there, and it was expensive. So this has, when I got involved with HUD in New Hampshire, there was only one other guy that was a consultant in this state, and he was the building inspector in the city of Concord, New Hampshire. He kind of got out of it, and I was kind of spearheading this whole thing. Nobody understood this loan. All they knew about the realtors, whenever I asked, have you ever done one of these? And I didn't ask that tonight, because it's become much more popular, said yes, and I would never do it again. Because the realtor ended up trying to be the builder, helping everybody else and getting it put together, and it was a real fiasco. So they created my position, that took them out of the game. Same thing what it is today. But this, you can buy, you know, if you have a small beauty salon or anything like that, as long as 41% is commercial, 51 has to be residential. 203K is just not for low income. What they mean, you know, a lot of people think this is for low income folks. I don't know exact numbers for 22. Do you know the maximum loan for 22 for FHA products? Yeah. I think in New Hampshire, it varies by counties, but they're raising the rates. I think I saw in general it was $420,000 for a single family home. You can purchase up to 4 units and have a 203K in a FHA loan, and I think it's $910,000 or $20,000. That's the maximum amount. In other words, between the purchase price of the property and the repair values, it can't exceed those amounts. It varies in different areas. So Mass may be a little higher because property values are up. And they're raising 22 because property values are up. They're trying to keep up with the times. But I did a $800,000 rehab loan in Derry, New Hampshire, and it was on a lake, and it was 4 units. It had a beautiful mansion in front of it, big old colonial, and then it had 3 units beside it that they were gonna rent out. And he borrowed $835,000 to do it. That's the largest rehab loan I've done. But it doesn't matter. It can be just a regular FHA loan up to whatever the max is. You have to always check with your broker on that one because it changes and it varies by counties. New Hampshire, if you go on the coast, it's 6.25. If you come inland, it's about 420. So, because the coast of New Hampshire is much more money. Same thing in Mass. Anything on the coast is going to be much higher up in there. So there's 2 types of 203K loans. The first one's called a streamline. That's up to $35,000 worth of repairs with contingency. It was Stacy brought up a contingency reserve. Contingency reserve can be anywhere from 10 to 20%. You will have a reserve. So if you're going to purchase one of these and you're looking at $300,000 with the rehab, you would be borrowing $330,000 for that rehab. It's the rehab amount. So $300,000 in rehab, whatever the purchase price of the home, but you will have at minimum 10% added to that as a contingency. It can go up to 20. The consultant oftentimes makes recommendation to the lender. It's the lender's choice, except for if it's an unoccupied property. So if it's not been lived in, it's a foreclosure, hasn't been lived in for 6 months, or you just have a foreclosure, it must be a minimum of 15%. And right now, I know a lot of the lenders that I deal with, and they're making them draw 20% because of the price fluctuations that are going on in the market. When this stuff hit the fan, we had contracts that were written and signed, and then it spiked. And we know what happened. We weren't talking the pricing going up by 10%. We were talking the builders coming back and saying, I cannot do it. It's 100% more than what we're already contractually obligated to do. What do I do? And there was no answer. The only answer I could give is wait. These loans are supposed to be completed in 6 months. That went out the door, the lenders pitched in, everybody's working together, and they had to sit a little bit until it settled down so that the prices are back down. You cannot borrow any more money in this loan should you run out on the other end. That's the point behind the contingency. My job is when we get large projects that are over 35,000, I have to do an estimate on that project, and then I compare my estimate to the builder's estimate when I approve it. Because I have to say, I feel that the builder is borrowing enough money with contingency above that to complete this work. Because if you run out and you can't write a check, they will take back the house in foreclosure. It's happened. Only once in the 11 years I've been doing this. The guy just didn't complete it, just sat on his hands, and about 3 years later, I got a call from HUD. He made a complaint, and we all got together and talked. He lost the house. So we try not to run out of money. The streamline is for minor repairs. It's not meant to be, a HUD consultant is not required on a streamline loan. You can use my services, but you do not have to. You can do these on your own. Therefore, items that aren't associated with any of the frame, any of the structure. If there's any structural damage or component in the repair value, you must do a full 203K. And that's when I get involved. I may not be involved in the $35,000 one. It's nothing to do with the foundation. You do not need to use me. There's no upfront cost to this. The way it works is when you do a streamlined loan, the builder, let's say it's 30,000, I heard that number kicked out there. What happens is when they close on the loan, they will cut a check to the builder for half the money. When he completes the project, they will send out generally the appraiser to verify that the work has been done, then they will pay him the balance. If there's any money left in contingency, because the maximum amount on a 15% contingency is $30,500 worth of repairs, $4,500 in contingency. If you go on a roof, like Brian did, and they strip the shingles off, he comes down and says, you got 300 square feet of rotted sheathing. You know, we need another $600 or $800 to fix that. We go into contingency, we pull that out, and we pay the builder for that. They do a change order, and then they give the builder the amount. If you don't use it all, they will usually allow you to upgrade things and use it for other items. You have to check with the lender on a streamline. If you don't use it in that process, then they will take the money, put it back in, and reduce the principal of the note. They do not reduce the payments. Okay? When you close, you will sign, these are my payments. It just as investors, you're buying in. You have to borrow this contingency amount. You hope everything comes out well. If it does, you get your principal reduced 3 years later. You sell your investment. You reduced your payments already. Okay, and you got in. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But so 35,000. I'm used to looking at my computer to see the next slide coming up. But I'm trying to stand at 10 because I'm recording me. The full 203K. This is not a loan. Neither one of these loans are for just minimum property requirements. You can have a home that's brand new and do this loan. And I'm going to show you a picture of when we did. If you have any minimum property requirement, smoke detectors, flaking paint, rot, trip hazard, any safety hazards. Smoke detectors, folks, if you see that on an appraisal, it needs to be installed on a regular FH. Battery operated are okay. They do not have to be hardwired. Just keep that in mind. So if you get an appraisal done and you need smoke detectors, the seller, I've had buyers while I'm out there literally ask the seller if they could go get them and stick them up, so I didn't even write it up. And they were done. But on an FHA loan, when you get that battery operated, okay. It's those basic kind of broken glass. Beyond that, You could go into a house and it has no problems meeting minimum property requirements. And you said, but I really, in realtors, you folks who sell these homes, and you get a guy, you've been out there 10 times, 10 meetings with these folks, they find a neighborhood, love the neighborhood, everybody likes the house, and the husband says, or the wife says, I'm not living in that kitchen. So you can do your kitchen over. Okay? You don't like the green toilet and tub, you can do the bathroom over. You are still in a streamline. Think about it, we're not touching anything structural on this home, and it's not, you know, when it's just simple replacement kind of thing, even moving the plumbing does not change the effects of it. So it's not a loan just for rehab, for damage. It's a little tool that a realtor can put in their little toolbox and say, I got a solution for you. How about you borrow the money to fix that kitchen? And if it meets requirements, now you still gotta meet appraisals and everything and your qualifications, you answered a question. We love or the husband said, love the place, I don't have a garage, and I'm not buying a house without a garage. And the wife's like, oh, I want this house. You can put a garage up. The beauty when they do this, remember I mentioned that these appraisals are done as though the work has already been done. So if the neighborhood has houses that sell for $375 with a garage, you're buying yours for $325, you need $50,000 to put a garage in, that's gonna fly. You can borrow 110% of the value, the appraised value.
So what happens if you're doing one of these and you know you have some unhidden costs and it runs over?
The contingency,
So what if it goes over that?
you write a check.
Okay, so you have the option to pull out of pocket or things like that.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
So piggybacking on that, the guy that got foreclosed on, did he eventually just not get everything up to minimum requirements? So if it, like.
That's correct.
he
The house
violated
was
his
not
FHA.
completed, he could not get a certificate of occupancy, house was not readily marketable.
So he could be paying his bills
He did
every
pay,
single
he
month.
paid the
It
mortgage.
has nothing to do with money.
It wasn't. He paid the mortgage. That was his thing. Then he tried to say I was in collusion with the builder, and I took the builder off site and brought him to another job. I didn't even know the builder. I met him when the guy introduced me to his builder. I have nothing to do with the builder. I may make a recommendation if you can't find one. I can't even do that today, because we just can't get builders, and that's a problem with this loan, because once you close, you have 30 days to start. And they are pushing that start, would be get a permit, now we've opened the loan. We've started, and then people are working, lenders are working. Remember, HUD's insuring this. This is not money from HUD. HUD puts no money into this thing. The investor puts no money into it. It could be from, I believe, Stacy, your company has an in-house program, correct?
Yeah.
So when you close, they have a rehab department that's gonna help disperse the money along with me. We work together. I'm overseeing the project. My responsibility is looking out after HUD's interest first. So I make sure the work is done well. I am not a project manager for you, but it does trickle down and I care about it. I care about everybody I work with, including the builder. I'm a builder. If the builder's doing his job, a good job for a builder is getting his money flow, keeping his cash flow coming in. If he's out there struggling, then it's not a loan for him. If he can't carry himself until he gets from point A to B to get a draw, he's gonna start sucking wind. So when I deal with these folks and I kind of talk to them, I ask them direct questions. Can you handle this? Yes or no? Yes.
So if you're getting pricing and you're pretty close to the cap of the streamline, why wouldn't you just push it over and go into the full 203K? I guess, what is the benefit of streamline versus the regular?
We're gonna, the only difference is the amount of money and structural damage. If there's no structural damage to the property, it can be a streamline. The beauty of the streamline is when your builder wants a deposit, because when we go into a full, there is no money up front for the full. It's a draw process. In other words, he has to work from A to B, calls me up, I go out and inspect the property and authorize a certain amount of money to be released to him, and I let the lender know, I send them the paperwork, and then they do their process. and then they release the money. I don't work for lenders, I don't work for HUD, I work for myself. But I'm a non-biased third party looking after everybody's interest.
So who hires you? Is it the buyer or would it be the
Buyer,
lender?
yep.
So the buyer does.
So if you hire me, if we go into a full, then, let me go through a couple more slides and then I'll answer that question more.
Yep.
So we can do large projects, the prevailing number is the maximum amount. So if you have a 4-unit and it can appraise for 900,000 and you can borrow up to that, you can borrow that amount of money, okay? The frame of the house can be affected, it could be collapsed. I'm gonna show you some pictures of what they look like. We just need a portion of the foundation remaining in order to qualify. You cannot do a house that is less than 12 months old or had at least a certificate of occupancy or been occupied for 12 months. Okay, cannot do new construction with this, but you can put an addition on it. You can do anything you want, pretty much. You can't buy pansies or flowers. You can't have a hot tub or a theater room, but you can do anything pretty much that you can think of with a home. And I got pictures, I'll show you in a minute. So you are required to hire me. I do get a fee. My fee is based on the total amount of the construction. I'm not overpaid, I will show you that. The base fee starts at $15,000. I get $400 between that and $30,000 to write that up. I have a set of documents I must do. I have to inspect the property, put together an estimate of the repairs. Then I have documents that I have to write up that has to go to the lender before they can even order the appraisal with my number on it. And then the appraiser will then take my documents, my estimate, the builder's quote, and go out to the job. All the lenders today are requiring my numbers to match the builder's quote when I approve it. So the lender's just looking at what we've all agreed upon. My numbers could be higher, they could be a tad lower. What I'm saying when I sign off is I agree that the builder can do this project for the amount of money that's gonna be borrowed on this loan. I'm not saying that, I think you can get your bathroom done for $2,000 less than what he's charging you. That's not I'm not interfering with commerce here. That's kind of a no-no. Some consultants out there act as project managers. They are going beyond the scope of what they're supposed to do.
What are you using to come up with your estimate? Are you using like a means or an exactiment type database, or are you just using industry?
There's a bunch of software that we use. I have a software package, and I've been doing this for 45 years. I can leave the job and tell you where you're at. I actually do my estimate while I'm walking. If I don't know something, I will verify it just to make sure. But we'll talk more why that's even more valuable for my services on it. So the fee starts at $4,000. Anything above $100,000 in construction, $1,000 is max I can charge. If it's $800,000, I can charge $1,000 and $25 for each of those other 3 units for the write-up. It's a lot of work. I don't get a lot of those. This isn't really meant to do those larger kind of projects, but that's the biggest one I ever done. Once that's done, they will escrow based on the amount of draws I recommend, usually 5 on a larger project. They will escrow my draw fee as part of the loan. I get $350 a draw. I do all the paperwork. I go out, check the job, photograph it, fill out the paperwork, get everybody to sign it, and we send it into the investor for release for a draw. All of that money, let's just use $500 was a write-up fee, the documents. People pay me that up front when I do the documents, because now they're gonna order the appraisal. If it doesn't pass or something happens down the line, they don't get their money back. I've already done my job on that end of it. However, if you get to the other end of the loan and you're at closing, you can ask to have that money reimbursed. Folks who you're doing a rehab loan, can't live in the house for 3 months. You can borrow 3 months payments for that loan in the loan while you're living in an apartment before you can move into the unit. Okay. Some basic streamlined projects: upgrade bathroom, paint, floor, siding, new heating system, electrical, plumbing. It's the systems inside the house, the interior house. We're not touching much of it. You can do a lot of work with this. The other thing with realtors who sell to FHA loans, home inspector went out there and flags a bad roof. Nobody knew. You got to take $8,000 or $10,000 for a roof. Go to this. Now you've answered. Negotiate, do your job, whatever you need to do. That's not my job, but you might, a fair one to me. My mind is the seller puts in 50% of it, and the new person, accepts 50% more on their side. They get a brand new roof for half the price, and you resolve the problem because the seller couldn't afford to pay for it. Now you've got the issue resolved. Okay. Finished basements, anything you can think of. You just don't like it. It's not. It's whatever's your will. You can buy appliances. You can do the roof, and you have, let's say $1,000 left in contingency. You can ask your lender. Streamline, sometimes the lender will refuse to let you upgrade. They just want to close it. In a full, we use that excess contingency probably 90% of the time for upgrades. People will we're trying to keep the repair values down because we got a lot of minimum property requirement problems. They really want new countertops, but it's like, you're gonna add another $5,000, and it's like, geez, we can't. We don't have the money, it doesn't make sense. Well, let's say it's a $50,000 job and a 10% contingency. If we don't need the contingency, you can now go buy your new countertops. So you can work it that way as well. Okay. Windows are a big one on old buildings. Replacement windows. I mean, you've already evaluated the price immensely and comfort level of people living in it. So this isn't meant for just fixing up the things to get into it. Okay? You can have 1 to 4 units. You have to occupy it for a year. Note, in 2008, when the economy collapsed and HUD took back billions of dollars in real estate, they realized just how fraudulent this loan has been used. The regular FHA loan, it's always been a requirement that it's owner occupied. People were buying, tenement buildings, 4 units, and never moving in. They didn't even live in the state. And they came out in 2009 is when I started working with them. Rumor had it that they came down, they said, they are checking. They can check your mailing address. If you raise a red flag to them, they will go and check your tax documents. You had better occupy that thing for 12 months. After 12 months, you can do whatever you want. You can sell it, you can rent it, and go to your next FHA rehab. So I've worked with young folks. I got this one young man. I've done 3 buildings for him. He started out buying a 3-unit. He lived in the little dumpy part of the 3 units, borrowed on this loan, fixed it up, used it as a lever to go to the next one. Lived in 12 months, and he bought his next building, did the same process.
Just to clarify that, I've read that the intent is what matters in it. Is it 12 months to the day you have to live there? Or, when you bought the property, you intended to live there full time, something happened 6 months down the road and you had to move for whatever reason? I don't know. Intent is not. If you became ill, your legal address, your mailing address has to be 12 months there. Okay? Now, if you got injured and you weren't living in your unit and you rented it out, but your mailing ad, that was your home still, yes. If a family situation or job change says I'm moving on, you are not complying to HUD's guidelines. Beyond that, I don't know.
Sometimes I talked to a lender recently about that, and we said that if there's extenuating circumstances 8 months into it, and you want to go ahead and move and try to get another FHA loan, sometimes they'll do that.
Mm.
There's 2 agencies we're talking here. I'll get you in a second. There's HUD, that guideline. HUD, government stuff, black and white. You know those old glass fuse panels? You can put the penny in and make them burn up and all this stuff. HUD says that's still acceptable as a unit, as an electrical panel. Everybody know what I'm talking about? Nobody will even insure that thing. If they do, they're going to rape you and tell you gotta get it done, and if you don't get it done, then they're gonna drop your insurance. But HUD says it's acceptable. Then you have the investor, okay? Now, the confusion in the gray area goes between the investor's requirements and HUD's requirements, and it can get really messy. However, think about this. The investor is the person or the organization that put the cash into the building and the commercial. That can become a real big gray area. It could be a part where you may have to pay some of that. Yes, sir.
So if it's commercial, but say it's all like residential units,
Yep,
is that so like you have to only do 4 units? Like it goes
maximum
plus,
4, yeah.
5 plus a day.
When you go beyond 4 units in a real estate transaction, you are in a commercial transaction. FHA is a residential loan program. Any residential loan program is 4 units or less, because above that, you are now a commercial property. There's different codes and guidelines and requirements to that stuff. And so that, it's a whole different lender. And could be the same broker, but they're gonna be processing it very differently. And you are not gonna get 3.5% down.